Today, we're making the SOMA glitch text from the game SOMA. Now, the way I'm going to do this video is first, we're going to take a look at the reference, then we're going to take a look at the entire node tree here. I'm going to show you exactly what I did, tell you why I did it, and by the end, you'll have the building blocks to create glitch effects all on your own. Or you'll just have a really cool SOMA text effect. This was a really intricate effect that took some time to build. And there's a very good reason for that. You see, glitch effects have literally hundreds of variations to them, and for each one, there are several details that you need to fine-tune to get the exact look that you want. So when we play this back, there are so many mini moving parts that we have in here. So let's watch this from its beginning. So here's the clean playthrough, and we can see we've got some of these lines kind of moving around right here. We've got a cool grid, and of course we have the glitch effect itself. Right off the bat, you can see we've got a black background in the center with kind of an oceany blue-green background behind. We've got some light rays here as well that we're seeing, so we're going to need to create some of those. But then of course we have the centerpiece that we're actually looking for. Right, we've got our normal text, which then devolves into this like broken apart. We can see the curve of the S right here. So we've taken the top of this S, we've moved it over. And the same goes for the rest of the letters, where we've taken a whole bunch of small pieces of them. We've just kind of thrown them around, completely destroyed the text. But we also have this kind of screen scan line effect right here. And so I think we can make a really clean version of this effect. You can even see we've got some chromatic aberration going on. We've got blue on the bottom, we've got green on the top. We even have this grid behind it that is shifting and moving along with it. So this whole thing, the reason it looks so complicated is because there are so many moving parts to this, and we're going to create something that is very similar. Yeah, so you can see now we've got red, we've got blue, we've got green and blue. So we've got scan lines, we have our basic glitch effect, we've got some chromatic aberration taking place, we've got the actual displacement, we've got a little bit of a glow, it looks like, as well. And then if we take a look at this text down here, you can see as it plays out, we've got the word safe. That's kind of been corrupted. Instead of it just glitching, it's got this kind of like it's possessed by something. So really cool stuff. And then of course behind our text we have this kind of web of black and white wires. It's kind of like a cybernetic grid, kind of like it's some kind of circuit that's alive or something. And we can even see our opacity has either been turned down or we're just overlaying the grid right on top of our letters. So that's another detail for us to keep in mind as well. So there's about 8 parts that we needed in order to create this effect. We needed our base glitching text, which is this. Then we add on all of the glows and the chromatic aberration, and that's different enough where I can separate it as its own part. The reason it's different enough is because we have the actual movement and the degradation of the text itself. And then we have all these visuals going on top of it, these scan lines, the chromatic aberration, the glow. I'm separating those two elements. So we're gonna create the displacement first, and then we're gonna add the visuals on after. Then we've got our white grid underneath here that we're going to create, and that's gonna get the same visuals by the look of it that were put onto the text. We have our white lines. We've got kind of a cybernetic little thing going on here. Doesn't seem to have a ton of rhyme or reason to it. Some parts are connected, some parts aren't. We've got some black lines after our white lines as well. And we can probably copy the same process for our white lines, so don't need to worry too much about that. Then we have our background, which we see at the beginning here. And we even have the light rays that go on top of it, and that's going to be a small touch that will make a difference. And it looks like the light rays don't really penetrate the black, so we'll need to make sure to feather those out. And then last but not least, we have our small text here with the little corrupted word that we're going to recreate. So Let's dive right in, shall we? So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create our big text along with the glitch. And the way we did that was with a text plus node here. The font we ended up using was Organetto Ultra Bold. So I'll leave a link to that font in the description. Instead of having our text be pure white, I've pulled the color down a little bit to give it a little bit more gray. Then we increased the size and the tracking so that our letters would be spaced out a little bit more to kind of resemble the same spacing that SOMA has. And of course, we're going to put DaVinci instead of SOMA. So this is the easy part, getting the actual text, getting the font, figuring out the size and the spacing. Now we need to begin creating the actual degradation of our text. And the first thing I did was add a mosaic blur. And you can see right off the bat, we've instantly eaten away at any edge that isn't inherently straight. Even the straight edges, we're destroying the edges of our text right there. And what I've done, because I don't want the text degradation to be present for the entire clip, is I've gone to the blend settings of my mosaic blur here, and you can see I'm just keyframing it from 0 to 1, and then from 1 to 0, 0 to 1 to 0 to 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, in time with our SOMA text right here, so that whenever our SOMA text is glitching, our DaVinci text will also be glitching. And we're going to copy this process for more or less every single element involved in our displacement or our degradation. Now, typically, this would mean that we would need to copy these same keyframes for every single node that's involved. But don't worry, I'm going to show you a really nice shortcut that removes all that extra work and is going to speed us along much, much faster. So after we have our mosaic blur applied onto our text, the next thing I needed to do was figure out how we were getting this kind of displacement effect where pieces of our letters were being, kind of cut out and then moved to one side, to the other side, moved up, moved down. And because we're just displacing pieces of our letters, we were going to need a displace node. Now, a displace node is going to manipulate whatever information you plug into it. So right now we have some still text, we have a mosaic blur applied. So I'm taking both of those, putting it into the displace, and I'm saying, hey, take my slightly degraded text here and mess it up a little bit. But I only want to mess up like the top of the D or part of the A or a piece of the V or just like half of the I. So I want to affect part of the letter, but not all of it. And so in our displace node here, we have all our displacement controls, and this is going to actually tell whatever we plug into our foreground input how to move around the affected parts. So to give you guys a really quick example here, if I take just our text and I plug that into our displace node, you'll see nothing is happening so far. And the reason nothing is changing is because I need to put something into the foreground input of the displace. This is going to create data that tells the displace node where to add the displacement. Right? The displace node itself only controls the actual displacement effect. It doesn't control where it happens. Now, if I take a rectangle node and I plug it into our displace, here we go. And you can see already that our A has been warped slightly. And our N is actually a little bit bigger than our C. Now, if I take the refraction strength and I pull this all the way up, you can see we were beginning to warp the area inside of our rectangle node. Now, if I pull up our soft edge here, you're noticing something really interesting is starting to happen. And let's put the rectangle node in by itself. So when I pull up the soft edge, I'm feathering out the area of effect to create a gentler transition with our displace node, so that when I plug this in here and I pull up the refraction strength, now instead of having a very tight mask here where we're completely cutting everything off that's not inside of the rectangle, I can actually pull up our soft edge, and now this kind of bubble that we have is being feathered out across here, and it allows the N to slowly go from normal to warped. And this is really, really useful for a lot of things. In our case, what we're going to do is create data that tells our Displace, hey, we want to take pieces of our letters and we want to move them over or out of the way or get rid of them completely. And the way we're going to do that is with a fast noise node. Now, what a fast noise node starts off as is usually this. Our fast noise node is typically just kind of a bunch of smoke, and we can manipulate the properties of that smoke by adjusting our size, our scale, our contrast. You can turn your fast noise into basically anything you want. And what we've done here is we've created a whole bunch of lines, not unlike the static you would see from a glitch effect where there's no clear signal, so that you just have a bunch of bars of information and then static behind it. And the way we were able to do that was by pulling our detail up all the way, same with our contrast, and then you'll notice you have one singular scale control, but if you uncheck your scale control, it gives you now isolated influence over both your X and your Y scale. So when we pull our X scale all the way down and we pull our Y scale up, we're actually stretching out all those little bits of smoke that you saw before into essentially straight lines. And then the way that we can get these straight lines to be almost solid with no gradient or no fade in between is by going into the color tab, changing our type from to color to gradient. And then you can just pull your black and your white however you want. And you'll see that if we have a smooth transition from white to black, we get a whole bunch of grays in between. But when we put them super close together, that transition from black to white or white to black is happening in a very, very small area. And that's how we get these almost solid bars of color. Then with our seethe rate up a little bit, this is what we end up with. Then we can take that, we can plug it into a mosaic blur to then force even more of a separation between our whites and our blacks, and we can pull our pixel frequency up or down to determine how big we want these bars to be. We also pulled our aliasing all the way down because you can see when we have it up, it allows for a smoother transition between our pixels. And for our glitch effect, you can see it is a very clear cut. So we want to keep this very clear cut as well. So now we have our displacement information, and you'll see when we plug that into our Displace, right, this is what we're ending up with. You see we've got our 4 bars here, plug that into here, you can see we've got our 4 bars right here, and they are actually moving pieces of our letters away. And that is because in our Displace node, we've made some adjustments in our settings that pushes these parts away from each other. If we pull our Y refraction up, you can see now we're adjusting things going up and down. We're going to pull everything down, right? I can move this up instead. Or we could pull our X refraction up and our Y refraction up, and we can really, really harshly pull apart our letters here. So we've created our text, we've added a mosaic blur to degrade the quality, then we keyframed our mosaic blur, then we created a mask for our displacement information using a fast noise. We changed the amount of bars that we had available with our mosaic blur, plugged that information into our Displace, and now when we play it back, we end up with this really cool glitch effect already. Now, remember when I told you we were going to need to animate everything involved in our glitch effect? This includes our Displace. If you played back and you noticed yours did not look like mine, that's because we've done something very, very simple that you are definitely going to want if you want to save time. And that is going into our settings tab of our Displace node. We right-clicked on our blend, we hit add expression. I have remove expression because I've already added one. And then we hit pin to keep this node here, then going to our first mosaic blur, we grab the plus button on our Displace 2, and we simply click and drag that up onto the blend of our mosaic blur. And what we're doing when we add an expression and then we drag it on top of another node's property, in this case we took our Displace's blend node and then we dragged it on top of our mosaic blur's blend mode, I'm telling my Displace's blend, I'm saying, hey, whatever mosaic blur is doing, you're going to do the exact same thing. So you can see I really don't have any keyframes here except for right here, but the value is still changing as we move along, and that's because it's copying the mosaic blur's values exactly. And that is what allows us to have both of these properties work together to create this really cool glitch effect. So next, because I'm expecting this effect to get really visual heavy and I want the text to still be easily readable, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another layer of our text right here. And you can see it is ever so slightly different from our original DaVinci text that we have over here. And that's because we're using the same font, but instead of using ultra bold, we're just using bold. And so with the same size and tracking data, we plugged into an Erode Dilate node just to pull down our text body size a little bit. And the Erode Dilate node basically will expand or contract the border of whatever you plug into it. So if I was to take a red background, for example, and I plug that into here, and I put a little mask onto it, and we go like this, you can see that adjusting our settings, we're pulling in or pushing out the border of our rectangle. Then we merge that over top of our glitching text, and now what we've done is we've created a very thin body, almost like a frame inside of our glitch effect that takes it from this to this, so that we always will still have a very thin piece of the letter being held together, and that ends up looking like this instead of just looking like that. So now that we have our base glitch effect and we've bolstered it with a very simple frame, we then added an X glow to give our text that kind of lighter blue color, and then we added in a soft glow to have a little bit of glow outside of the text as well. And you don't actually need this X glow here. This is a tool that exists outside of Resolve. Now, if you don't have X glow available to you, no worries, no problem. What we can do is add a color corrector node, and we can simply pull our color in the direction of blue, red, green, whatever color you want your glitch to be. And then we would add a very simple glow node here, or in our case, because our color is now blue, you don't even need the two glow nodes. You can just use one, and you can adjust the gain to whatever you would like. So then with our two glow nodes selected, you can see we have our blend modes connected to our mosaic blur all the way at the beginning here. And that is because with both of these, because they're involved in the actual glitching, we only want the glow visible when it's visible in our reference. So make sure to pin the node, go over to your mosaic blur, right? Add your expression again, and then click and drag onto the mosaic blur to make sure that you get that blend connected. Or what you can do, this might be a little easier, is go to your Displace 2, copy the information you have for your mosaic blur, and then when you go to your node that has the expression, you can simply paste that information in there instead of having to pin your nodes and worry about making sure everything is on the correct node or making sure that, you know, you have the right one pinned. So moving on, because we also have a degradation in the focus, after our glow, I put a bit of a blur onto our text here. And we did the exact same thing with our blur. We're adding an expression, and we're connecting it to the mosaic blur's blend mode. Now, here is where things get a little bit complicated. This is where we're going to create the chromatic aberration effect that we have on our example here. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, pretty much every color that you're seeing on a screen is a combination of red, green, and blue. And when you have media in Fusion, you can actually isolate that color information again into red, green, and blue. And the way we're going to do that is with 3 channel Booleans nodes. So with 3 of these created, what I then had to do was adjust my settings here. So you'll see we've got operation, we've got to red, to green, to blue, and to alpha. So operation is changing how the actual information is being perceived. Then I'm changing what I'm doing with each of the color properties, and then also my alpha or transparent property. So on our first Boolean, our operation is difference to red is do nothing. We leave green and blue as green foreground and blue foreground, and then alpha is also do nothing. And you can see that takes us from our kind of blue glow with our blur to being just straight red. When we move on to the next one, this time it's the green that we're changing to do nothing, and you can see we get green. And then we're going to do the same thing with our blue as well, where we're going to change blue to do nothing. Everything else is good. Now, we have successfully separated our data here into its red, green, and blue color properties. After that, we are going to add a transform node for each of them. The reason we're not merging these all together and then moving them all together is because I want to put a slight offset between our red and our blue and our green here to create that chromatic aberration effect. So when I click on transform, you can see we have a slight difference in the center control between our X and, in our blue's case, our X and our Y. So I also added color corrector nodes right here for each of them. For our red and our green, these are purely for you to play around with so that you can change the color that you want your glitch aberration to be. You can have it be green, you can have it be purple, you can have it be whatever you want. Now for our blue, because we already have this kind of blue glowing scan line here, when I plugged our transform from our blue into our color corrector, I actually yanked the entire thing closer towards blue. And then to degrade the edges a little bit more, we connected our transform also into our mask input as well. And you can see that takes us from a dark blue to a light blue, which is closer to how our SOMA text is. Then we're going to merge our green on top of our blue, and you can see that our green by itself is okay, but with the blue underneath, now we're beginning to get a little bit of an effect. Then we're going to merge the red underneath of all of these. And now you can see we've got blue underneath, and kind of on the left, we've got our green over top of everything, and we have our red on the right. And even just by itself, this has a little bit of chromatic aberration. So if I only wanted green text, right, then that would be pretty darn cool. So we're going to take all of these and we're going to merge our original blurred text on top of it. And the way that you create these little notches in between your nodes is by holding Alt and then left clicking. And that just helps you a little bit with your organization. So we're going to take all of our color information here. We're merging that underneath of our blurred text. You can see our blur connects to the foreground input on our merge. And now we've got green on the left, we've got red on the right, and we've got blue underneath. Then we're going to take our blur node, plug that into a scanlines node, and you can see we've got this very, very faint scanline effect now. There's our before, there's our after. You can see it a lot right here. And if I make that a little bit more exaggerated, just so you guys can see, there's our before, there's our after. And then we're going to merge our scan lines on top of our blur and our color information. And so now you can see we've got our scan lines, we've got our green, we've got our red, we've got our blue underneath. Now we're starting to get a really, really cool glitch effect on our text. Now remember, because all of these are integrated with our glitch effect, they all need to have the same timing. So for our channel booleans nodes, in the settings tab of each of them, you're going to need to add that expression in and make sure it's connected to your mosaic blur. So because I didn't do anything with the two colors here, I left these alone, but for our blue color right here, we did the same thing. And then the same thing with our merges, just to be safe, both of the blend nodes connected to our mosaic blur. And even though we are making these changes upstream, if for whatever reason we replace these nodes, we do anything else with them, we're covering all of our bases here by also adjusting our opacity or our blend mode downstream as well. So if I get rid of my color corrector node here or I reset it, it's okay because it's still going to be toggled on and off with the same keyframes that our mosaic blur has. So with everything all merged together, we have our really, really cool glitch effect. And this is, and so if you've made it this far, give yourself a pat on the back. You have created your very first glitch effect, and you've applied it to some text. You've learned a little bit about fast noise, mosaic blur, displace, erode, dilate. You've learned about channel booleans, and you learned a really nice way to use expressions to save you a lot of time animating if you're going to be using the exact same keyframes. And hey, if you're getting value from this video, let me know in the comments below. Tell me what kind of effects you want to see more of, what kind of assets you want to see me make next. Also, be sure to check out my fourthwall page. There's a ton of free stuff for you linked in the description. Hit like, subscribe if you want more of this really awesome stuff where we're teaching all this awesome tech. Anyways, back to the video. And now that we've created the text itself, we can move on to all the other really cool elements that are involved in making this. We still have our grid. We still have our kind of black and white tech cybernetic underlay. We've got the background with the light rays. We have our small text with its little corrupted bit as well. So let's move on to creating our white grid that we have here first. And this is very, very simple to do. What we did is we took a rectangle node, and after unchecking solid, we can bring up the border width just a little bit. I also made sure to bring the width and height up all the way because I wanted this at the very, very ends of the border, and you're gonna see why in just a moment. We plugged that into a gray background. Now you can see we've got a simple box with nothing inside it. This is all we need. Then we took a transform node and we brought our size down, down, down. And this is the most important part. We change our edge mode to wrap. And what this does is it takes wherever the end of our border is and it connects it to another version of it, essentially creating this endless mode or wave of borders and boxes. Or in our case, lets us create a very, very simple, straightforward grid. Then, because our fast noise is really, really good at creating these procedurally generated and random masks, we plug the whole thing into a fast noise node. And you can see we've done the same thing with our color. We've changed it to gradient. We've adjusted the black and white values, and we've adjusted our X and Y scale as well. Then let me disconnect these two for just a moment. We put the whole thing on top of a transparent background. And then we got one rectangle mask, and we plug that into the mask input of our merge node. And you can see that now only in the center where our text would be is where the grid will show. And I've brought the soft edge up a whole bunch for this. We're keeping the solid mode checked because we do want what is inside to show. And then because we also have part of the grid showing down here, I've added a second rectangle mask as well. And the reason why we're using two masks here instead of just this one big one is because I want the feathering of our first rectangle node to move down, but I'm gonna wanna have a hard edge right here. And because you can't adjust the soft edge of each part of each side of a rectangle mask, when we connect this mask onto this one, and then we change our paint mode to multiply, you can see right away here, we've got our hard edge and then we have a soft edge down here. So that keeps it being cut off at the top. And then as everything moves down, our grid slowly fades. So taking all that together, I threw another X glow on it, and this is almost impossible to see, but details are very, very important. So just to take that same glow that I have from our original glitch text and the same soft glow that we have from our original glitch text, we're then going to copy all of these same nodes from over here and plug our grid information directly into it. And when we merge all of it together, you can see we end up with the same chromatic aberration that we do in our reference. Pretty darn cool. So now moving on, we want to create this kind of cybernetic web right here, where it's a kind of a combination of smaller grids and curved lines like in a circuit or like tree roots. Same thing down here. We also are going to want a black version of it too, then we can combine them. The way we're making that is very, very simple. Now in Fusion, you have what is called a grid node. And when you plug anything into a grid node, you get a grid right here. Now you can change the amount of rows and columns that you have on your grid. And this is really, really useful if you are doing something in Fusion and you need to make sure that you have your rule of thirds always present, which is a composition thing. If you don't know, look it up. It's also available for you in the edit page. What we are using it for today is we're going to take a transparent background. Then we are pasting a grid on top of it. We're going to plug that into another grid. We're going to plug that into another grid, and that, of course, into one more grid. And the way that I'm getting these different shapes that you are seeing here is by simply adjusting the transform controls that you see. So I'll just quickly show off each of the controls for each grid. And then, of course, again, we're going to use our fast noises as masks for each grid. And I'm not doing the settings for the fast noise in any particular way, right? I'm just doing the same thing with the color for each one. We're making sure we've got the black and white tight together to create that separation. And then bringing that seethe rate up a little bit is going to allow the grid itself to change and allow that cybernetic circuit to seem like it's moving a little bit. So I believe we also want the alpha for our fast noise for our grids down as well. Otherwise, you're going to end up with something that looks like this. And you can see that we're not really getting rid of any part until we do this and we pull that alpha back down. Then we took each fast noise node, plugged each one into its respective grid, and we end up with first something like this, then something like this, then something like this, until we have each of our grids seeming to be kind of alive with the help of the seethe rate of our fast noise nodes. Now, you'll notice, though, that these are all straight edges, and we do have some curved edges in here as well. So we're not going to do anything groundbreaking, right? We're going to get an ellipse, plug that into a background. We're unchecking solid, and we're bringing our border width up. Then I took a duplicate node, adjusted the amount of copies I wanted, and changed the X and Y size. And then in the jitter tab here, this is how we are getting all of our copies to have varying sizes and positions. Then we merge all that on top of our grid, and to add just a little bit of extra movement, we ended up taking another Displace node, plugging a fast noise into it. And with this one, you'll notice even though we have color gradient on, we don't actually care about the black and the white being separated because we want a smooth kind of movement happening with all of our grid lines here. So let's plug that in. Now you can see we've got a little bit of wobble here. Now, if I was to take the black and white and do this, you see we're not really getting a ton of movement or a ton of noticeable movement in our grid. But as I slowly pull this up, we get that wobble back, and it helps to keep everything from looking too uniform. So then finally, to create the actual area that this is going to be visible in, because you can see we only have a certain part of it visible behind the text, we only have part of it visible down here. We got a rectangle mask, softened out our edges a whole bunch so that it would be just barely showing from the bottom here. And then we also have an ellipse mask as well. We're going to leave our paint mode on as merge because we want these two things working together. And we're bringing our soft mode up as well, but not as much. And the reason we're not bringing it up as much is because we're going to do something very, very specific to affect the edges of this. First things first, we're going to plug it into a fast noise. We're going to have our color adjustment here. Oh, and something I forgot to specify with the black is you're going to want the black part of your gradient to be completely transparent. So you'll notice alpha is all the way down. So once we have a nice color here for our fast noise, we're plugging that into a mosaic blur to create more of a step fade transition as opposed to just a simple soft edge gradient transition. And then with everything merged on top of a transparent background, we're going to merge everything together. And now you can see we have the area of effect for our grid. So let's merge all this together. Boom. Now our background is finally starting to come together. And to replicate this process with our black lines, we're actually going to do more or less the same thing. We're going to take our same grids with our fast noises. We're going to get our circle ellipse, but this time we're going to add an extra step in here. And what we're going to do is add an invert color node, which is going to change our grids from white to black. Then we're going to add a luma keyer node, and we're going to make sure to adjust our settings so that we are getting rid of all of the white areas instead of getting rid of all of the black areas, because this time we want the white to be transparent instead of the black. Then again, all that is getting merged over top of a transparent background with the same ellipse, fast noise, mosaic blur combination that we have for our white grid. We're going to use another fast noise with a displace to warp it just a little bit. And now when we merge that together with our white grid and then we put our text on top of it, you can see we end up with something pretty darn cool. Now we're in the home stretch. We have all of our grids, we've got our glitches, we've got our big text. Now it's time to create the actual background, what everything is going to sit on before we finalize it with our small text and the little corrupted effect down below. So creating the actual background is very, very simple. If we take a look at our reference, it looks kind of oceany, kind of like murky water. It's blue with a little bit of green and it's dark. So we took a background node and I ended up changing the type from solid color to four corner. And then I simply hit pick screen color and selected the screen color on each of the four corners. And that gave us this, which is pretty good by comparison. Then of course I needed a dark background to go over top of it, but I also wanted it to be kind of semi-transparent. So we took a simple black background and we brought our opacity down just a tiny bit. Then we took a ellipse, added a dark spot on the bottom. Then we added a rectangle node onto our ellipse to make it a little bit more boxy. And for our paint mode, we made sure to keep our ellipse node as merge. Both of these are solid. All we've done really is adjust the size and pull up the soft edge a little bit. And when we merge it all together, we end up with this, which looks really, really close to our reference. Next, and we're gonna do something really, really interesting right here. We needed to create our light rays that we have up here. But here's the thing, the actual light rays node only functions off of the bright areas in your fusion composition, meaning that no matter what I do, I cannot get my light rays to start way up here and then slowly come down. They're going to be originating directly from the light areas of our composition. Normally, this would be a problem, but not for us. We ended up using a fast noise node, and I can tell what you're thinking. You're like, how the heck are we gonna turn this kind of gobbledygook into these nice light rays right here? Well, after adjusting our settings for a little bit and adding some seethe rate in here, right? Here's what we end up with. I also made sure to change our color to gradient again, and I didn't worry about the transition from white to black at all. Right, here's what we end up with. And now, watch this. This is where the magic happens. I took a dent node and added it into the mix. And I'm going to show you first what a dent node looks like with no effects on it. This is what a dent node looks like. It just takes whatever information that's in its area of effect and warps the hell out of it. Now you can see we're getting some kind of interesting looking designs here, right? We can kind of pull everything in one direction or another, and you're noticing that we went from this to now these kind of straight lines here, right? Really, really cool, right? I already have a similar setting with this dent node here. So if we just size this up and then we drag it up to here, we've created some makeshift light rays. So I'm going to put back our original dent node right here, and when we drag that into our viewer, we've gone from this to this. Really, really cool. Then we took a transform node, sized it up just a little bit, and the reason we didn't care about the black to white transition is because we wanted this nice faded gradient between them all. If they looked like this, that wouldn't be very convincing as a light ray. Then with our seethe rate up, now we end up with these really, really nice, calm light rays. You could even, instead of white, you could add on something like this. You could add a little bit of a soft glow to it. You could increase the glow size a whole bunch. Right? You could even do something like that. And now you've got some really, really nice light rays to work with. For us, we just need it nice and simple. Just like this, we've got our seethe rate up. Your seethe rate is going to control how fast these light rays are changing. If we put this all the way up to 1, you can see it's very, very violent, which is why we have it all the way down at 0.08. So now we merge the entire thing on top of our DaVinci text, and you can see there's our before, there's our after, and just like in our example where our light rays are not penetrating the black, we've taken our same ellipse node and added just a few minor adjustments. I've brought the soft edge up on this a little bit, and I've actually inverted it as well so that the light rays will only affect what is outside of this node. And so now you can see everything has come together to make this really, really cool effect. And we're almost done. The only thing we have left to do is create our little text box down here that has its corrupted red text. Now, to actually create our red text here, I needed to use 3 different text nodes. And you're probably wondering, like, okay, well, why would you use 3 different text nodes? When I look at this, I see 3 different elements. I see all of our text that remains unaffected. So in this case, it's out now on Xbox One, width, and mode. And then our other 2 text nodes are going to be this white safe and this red safe. So we've got element 1, and then we've got element 2 and element 3. So these 2 are going to be moving. This one is going to be staying still. So first things first, we've got infinite nodes, endless possibilities. And this is what it looks like by itself. This is what it looks like once nodes is all gone. And the way we were able to get the nodes part gone without having to add a whole bunch of spaces into our text plus node or have each individual word be its own node is with a modifier called character level styling. And character level styling is achieved by simply right-clicking either in this box or beside it and clicking on character level styling. Then the modifiers tab becomes available, and you can now begin affecting different parts of your text node individually. So in our case, when I drag a box over the letters that would be our node, and then I go to the shading part of character level styling, you can see the opacity has been brought all the way down, and I can adjust that in here. If I go over just possibilities, you can see now the opacity is back up. So this is how we change the opacity for just the node part. And then we did the exact same thing for these two nodes right here, where we have infinite nodes, endless possibilities, but you can see we've made the rest of our words transparent instead of our nodes transparent. And the reason we use character level styling instead of just writing out each word is because it allows us to preserve the positioning, so that when all of these are animating together, the nodes are exactly where they need to be. They're evenly spaced out. There's not any kind of extra adjustments I need to make sure that it's properly spaced out in terms of the lines and the word spacing itself. So easy peasy. We've got our infinite endless possibilities, and then we have our white nodes and we have our red nodes. So then for both our red and our white node, we went to the layout and we went into the center controls and we added a perturb modifier. Now what a perturb modifier does is it adds kind of like a randomness scale. So it's almost like a simulated camera shake. So if we watch our animated keyframes here, you can see that we are selectively enabling and then disabling that perturb. And we're mimicking the same kind of glitch timing that we have in our reference. The way we're doing that is just by going directly into the perturb on our text node. And I'm just taking the X scale and the Y scale along with the strength, and I'm just keyframing it down from 0 with X, Y, and strength. And then I'm moving it up, going to the frame right before our text is going to be normal again, adding another keyframe, and then once it's supposed to be normal, we add another keyframe, put everything back down to 0. And we just continue that pattern as we go. So that's how we did our white text. You can see our red text, we have the same keyframes, but this time I've actually brought the strength up along with the X and Y scale up just a little bit to allow the red to move a little bit further than the white does. And so between these two nodes, it creates this really cool kind of corrupted effect. And to make sure that we always have the white being on top of the red, we merge the white text on top of the red text using a merge node. Then we plug all of that underneath our infinite endless possibilities. We added a tiny bit of blur, and then we merge all of that together on top of our DaVinci, our grid, our background, our glitching. And finally, we get this really, really cool effect right here. And so, ladies and gentlemen, that is how we can create the SOMA glitch text in DaVinci Resolve. Thank you everyone so much for watching the video. If you want to see more videos like this, or you want to have a say in what video gets made next, drop a comment down below. Remember to like and subscribe so you can stay up to date and get more videos like this. If you want the font used in this video, there will be a link for that in the description, along with a link to my store page where there's lots of free stuff just waiting for you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.